I'm Todd Bookspan, and welcome to your neighborhood real estate show. The hyperlocal real estate show where real estate professionals talk about the neighborhood you live in or the neighborhood you want to live in. This episode is brought to you by homebuyeruniversity.net, your free comprehensive guide to buying or refinancing your home. Click over to homebuyeruniversity.net to get started online today. Welcome, everyone, to your neighborhood real estate show. I'm your host, Todd Bookspan, and I'm super excited to have Erik Kelly on the show. Erik's a real estate agent with eXp Realty, runs a team over there, and someone I've known for a long time, but excited to have the opportunity to interview you. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
You know, I'm glad you're excited because I'm excited too.
Awesome.
Way too many exciteds in the first few sentences here, but that's all right.
This is fun.
Well, and you know, the whole goal of this podcast, for those of you who are new, is really to be hyper local and also learn about really how Erik and his team are different. And I love the fact that you've been in Ahwatukee, Arizona for almost 24 years.
Yeah, almost 24 years.
You know, and that's kind of crazy. And so for someone who's listening who has no idea where Ahwatukee is, let's start there, and then let's kind of talk about a little bit of what makes it unique and why you love it so much.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I'll tell a little backstory actually on how I landed there because when I moved down here, I was in the corporate world. I wasn't in real estate yet. And at that time, you were looking through the Arizona Republic classified ads to find homes for sale.
Back when people bought newspapers.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I remember looking at the beginning of the classified ads, and it was like, Ahwatukee, like what the heck is that place? And so we ended up kind of stumbling on that community and have been there ever since. I think it's kind of a hidden gem in the valley, especially right now.
Yeah, it's really pretty because it's got mountains just to the north of it and to the west of it as well, correct?
Yes, it does. You have the Estrellas to the west. You have South Mountain to the north, which kind of separates Ahwatukee from downtown Phoenix. South Mountain's actually the largest municipal park in the United States of America.
I had no idea. I've ridden my bike up it many times, but no idea that it was
16,800 acres of park.
Wow, that's awesome. I love it. There's so many great trails there.
Yeah, I think that's for the residents of Ahwatukee, I think that's one of the big draws. It's a very active lifestyle down there, and you can very quickly sort of get off the beaten path, and you're still attached to the city, but feeling very much like you're out in the middle of nowhere and wouldn't have any reference point that you're adjacent to the sixth largest city in the United States, right? So.
Well, that's it. You know, I always have fond memories of going down there because it was always around some type of bike racing and riding around the mountain. And Ahwatukee's a place we spent a lot of time and have watched it grow over the years.
Yeah.
So just if you were from Phoenix, you just head south from the airport and you'd see it over there towards the right. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, exactly. It's probably a 10, 15-minute ride from the airport, depending on the time of day, depending on traffic, but just a few miles south, and you kind of go down and around the mountain. And it's a relatively small community. I think it's about 35 square miles. So it's 8 miles deep and 5 miles tall, and that's about it.
Yeah, we talked about zip codes, because we talked about zip codes a lot on the show, but it spans 3 zip codes, so we couldn't just say just one.
Yeah, it does. It does.
What about, you said golf. I know golf is a big thing down there. What other activities do people do in Ahwatukee?
Definitely cycling, so both road and mountain biking, lots of hiking, golf, I think tennis. You see lots of people walking. There's a number of master plan communities down there, so there's lots of open trails and things that are paved, through green belts and things like that. So it's just people being out and being pretty active most of the time.
And so if someone doesn't know, what master plan just means they actually put some thought into it.
They did.
And you said green belt, so green areas to, with paths down them and didn't just shove a bunch of houses together.
Yeah, for the most part, they did a good job. Those are the older communities I find are sometimes laid out a little bit better than the newer communities, because with newer development, land values increase so much that developers are trying to cram as many houses per acre as they can. Back at the time they started Ahwatukee, they were probably building about 4 homes per acre. Now I think the number's 7, 8, 9, something like that.
And so how long ago was that they started doing Ahwatukee? When did it come around?
Well, the first home was built in Ahwatukee in the 1920s.
Wow.
And it was built by a doctor who was the co-founder of the dental school at Northwestern University.
Oh, nice.
And so they purchased 2,000 acres that they called Ahwatukee Ranch for $4 an acre. Pretty good bargain. And then it evolved from there. But I think the first real like residential development for homes for sale were 1940s, somewhere around there. And then as we talk about community development, that really started in the 70s and kind of boomed in the 80s and 90s out there.
And it seems to me when I've gone to events down there and spent time down there, there's just lots of little pockets of what I would call community within the community. Little restaurants that seems almost like, you go in there and everyone kind of knows each other, and then I always felt like the outsider, but it seemed like there was just such great community. Is that common down there?
Yeah, I think that's really true. That's one of the things I liked about it. I grew up in a smaller town, and so as a place to raise my kids, there was really a small town feel. As they got a little bit older and started having a little bit more freedom, they were often reminded that, you're probably going to know somebody's mom or dad. So whatever you're doing, think twice about it, because I'm going to hear about it if you get outside the lines. So it kind of has that small town feel, definitely a good local vibe and a real sense of community down there.
And what kind of price range would someone expect in the area?
If you're in the single family home range, you're probably looking at the 300 range on the lower end, and then up to well over $1 million.
Yeah, there's definitely some beautiful homes down there.
Yeah, I think the most expensive home for sale right now is just north of $4 million.
Wow.
So
you would obviously strongly encourage someone who is thinking about moving to Arizona and has never heard of Ahwatukee to make sure they check it out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think the community has a lot to offer. I had said before, I think it's a little bit of a hidden gem in the valley right now, because we've seen a lot of transformation in different parts of the city. The central corridor is really revived, and Arcadia area is really revived and had a lot of transformation. And as different parts of the valley have developed, either Southeast Valley or out west or up north in North Scottsdale, Ahwatukee's kind of been overlooked by a lot of people, I think. So.
Well, and it's so close to quote unquote town, right?
It's
not as far of a drive as some of those other places that you've mentioned to hit downtown Phoenix or other parts of the valley.
Yeah, without a doubt. And obviously, as you live in a big city, as we've continued to grow Phoenix over the last 30 years or so, commute time is definitely a factor in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, we all spend a lot of time in the car, and we definitely won't talk about traffic today. That wouldn't be any fun.
Yeah. No.
So let's shift gears for a minute. Let's sort of talk about your team and client experience, because I think you take such a different approach. You really not that most realtors don't care about their clients, but it seems to me that you take a little bit different view on your relationship with the client and the experience that you hope they have.
Without a doubt, like when I stepped into this industry, the attraction point for me was that I really liked building long-term relationships with people. And my life in the corporate world was very much founded in building good relationships around business. And so real estate gave me the opportunity to do that, but not fly 100,000 miles a year anymore. And so I wanted to be home as my kids were growing up. And from the very beginning, though, I was very intentional about this is going to be a relationship. I'm never looking at real estate as a transaction. I think we're playing an important role in people's life story.
Yeah.
And I like to talk about the theme of legacy, and the way that resonates with me in regard to real estate is that we're part of what someone's going through as part of their personal legacy or their life experience. We may be helping them buy their first home. It may be the home that they're going to raise their children in. It may be their dream home or their retirement home. Maybe it's the first investment property that they ever buy that's their foundation for building wealth in life. But we're playing a really, really important role in that process. And so I don't take that lightly. And I'm really fortunate to have some amazing people that I get to work with.
Yeah, I think that's always key. And oftentimes when I talk to listeners, their concern is, well, I like Erik, but I only want to talk to Erik. But you've got people who actually specialize in different roles in different parts of the process.
Well, we do. I'm really actively involved with all of our clients, obviously. But what I want is the whole client experience. And so if there's a day that I'm not available because I have appointments, or maybe it's summertime and I'm away with the kids for a while or something like that, I still want to be responsive to our clients. So we do have some help with people that are available and able to show homes, if I'm not, and that are able to, I think, really do things that make the client experience overall better. So when we're in the transaction, we have one person that focuses singularly on making that a great experience for the client. If we're doing events in the community, we have somebody that's focusing on that and making that. So I'm contributing to that, but thankfully it's not all my responsibility, because I think it's a way better experience for the clients that it's not.
Yeah, I always say that. People are like, well, why do you have such a big team? I'm like, because they all do things that I stink at so much better than me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that some of our clients like the folks that I work with better than they like me, but thankfully they're still tolerant and loyal to me. So,
well, I think that's always the key, right? When you get the right people in the right seat of the bus, then it's going to make magic happen for the people who are going through the process with you.
Yeah, absolutely, makes a huge difference.
And so we talked about Ahwatukee. You guys do serve the whole valley, though.
We do, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've represented clients in Show Low. We've sold homes in Payson. West side, east side, we pretty much the whole spectrum we can cover. The important thing to me is really understanding what our clients' needs and priorities are. One of the things for me that's more portable in terms of how we relate our business is listing a property is really doing a market analysis and then identifying the unique qualities of a specific property. And listing success to me comes down to three things, which is price, positioning, and promotion.
The 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps. And so we can do those things pretty effectively in any market. When we get to the buyer side of the transaction, for somebody that's looking to buy a home, I think you really have to have some relevant experience in the local community, or it becomes a little bit more difficult to represent them. So you either are doing a lot more research to make sure that you're prepared, or you're finding someone that is more of a local market expert in that specific locality, and helping them get matched up with the right person there.
So if someone is thinking about listing their home, what kind of advice would you give them as far as interviewing the right agent? What kind of questions would they ask? What would they be looking for to make sure the person understood the 3 Ps and could represent them the best possible?
Oh, that's a great question. I think marketing and promotion is key. I think the digital brochure, the digital marketing that we're doing in this day and age, it used to be that you would put a sign in the yard and you would get inquiries and you would hold an open house, and which those things are still effective in our industry, but that was the way that you were expanding awareness about a new property coming to market. In the day and age that we live in now, most people are scrolling on their phone, looking at properties through some form of app, whatever they choose as their consumer experience. And so the way that we're presenting the property digitally in the first impression, that's really the first showing that we have. So we invest heavily on that side. So for someone that was thinking of listing, I would make sure that the person I was choosing had the capacity to do that. And I'd probably look at their track record around that and see how they're presenting properties to market. Promotion is scalability. How many different places are you promoting the property? And then pricing, I think, really comes from experience and market expertise. Are they doing the right kind of research? Are they able to look at things like upgrades and improvements and evaluating from both a buyer's perspective, but also an appraiser's perspective, because the vast majority of home buyers are getting a mortgage.
Yep, and it's got to appraise.
Yeah, it's got to appraise. So we're really, in that essence, we're selling the property twice. First, we have to present it to the market in a way that's going to attract buyers and be in a place where a buyer wants to make a commitment to the house. But then we have to be able to justify the price that we set for an appraiser to look at it logically and look at other market data and compare and say, yeah, this is a good investment for the mortgage lender.
It's funny, I've interviewed hundreds of agents and had been part of thousands of transactions. I've never heard anyone say I've got to sell it twice. But it's so right. I just love that.
Yeah.
Sell it twice, got to sell it to the appraiser. But that is true. And it's obviously in place to protect the client, to the buyer, to make sure that the value's there in Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or FHA, who's ever the end loan person. But in the end, you got a buyer who wants to buy it. And so I love the fact that you're going to help position that as a listing agent, because that's such a critical factor. Great. It's great that you sold it for that much, but you want to make sure that the transaction finishes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's really the worst. If you think about the process, I'm always looking at this through the lens of the clients that we serve and what is their experience. And so first of all, when you're preparing your home to go on the market, in an ideal scenario, I mean, every seller, almost every seller is like, I want to get the most I can for the property. Like, that's a given.
Right.
Understandably so.
No different than the person who ever wants the lowest rate on a mortgage.
Right, exactly. Same thing, right? I want the best deal. I want the best circumstances for me. But then part of that process is you're preparing your home, which is stressful. And then you go on the market. And then every time there's a showing, you have to prepare your home. It has to be spotless. Yep. You have to get out of the house. You have to adjust to somebody else's schedule. So the longer that process goes on, the more miserable the experience is for a home seller. So what we want to do is say, how do we really make your home sparkle, put it out there in a way where it's going to get massive exposure up front. We're going to create a lot of momentum at the beginning, ideally to attract more than one interested party. And that's going to sell your home the fastest. And typically it's going to sell for the highest price point that way too.
And so are you seeing a lot of that right now? Inventory's tight in the Phoenix marketplace. And so are you seeing lots of quick sales and multiple offers, or kind of help everyone understand what that looks like right now?
I think that's definitely relevant in our market today. Some of that's going to be related to what's the value proposition of the individual property, like given the price range that it's in, how does it stack up against the competition? Some of it's going to be related to what is the available inventory. Like a home at $250,000, $300,000 in this market, if it looks nice, there's going to be more than one person interested in that property. Yeah. Where I think it starts to falter as you get up at the higher price points, 5, 6, 800,000, pushing $1 million maybe. Buyer expectations are increasing. And so in a market like ours in Ahwatukee, I mentioned that a lot of the community development happened in the 80s and 90s. There's a lot of dated inventory down there now. And so, the home buyers don't want that. They want what they're seeing on HGTV or Pinterest, or, that's what they want to move into.
Make it look so easy.
Right, exactly. And so that's where you run into a challenge, I think, with moving inventory. And that's where the positioning part that I talked about becomes so incredibly important. But definitely our overall market inventory right now for active listings is below 20,000. 10 years ago when the market was struggling, it was like 60,000.
Right. So it's moving pretty fast, and there's a lower supply, especially in that lower price point.
Without a doubt. Yeah. There's definitely going to be competition. And probably at almost any price point for the really nice homes, there's always going to be competition.
Well, I think that's the key. You said it, right? Really nice homes, if someone's done that. So that's got to be a difficult conversation when you get someone with a dated home to let them know, yeah, you're not going to quite price up there, but if we did this work, we could get there. Or what is that? How would you give that conversation some life?
Well, there's always a reference point that people have. And sometimes you'll go in and a seller says, and we say, well, do you have a target price in mind? And they'll say, well, you're the professional. I want to know your opinion. I'm going to say, well, I'm going to share my opinion with you. But normally people have something in mind. And a lot of times it's like, well, my neighbor sold down the street for X, whatever. And so what I try and do is take a view of the market, go in and share that with a client and say, which home do you think is the most relevant comparison? And then I have an 8-point process that we go through. So we're going to take whatever price point that is, and then we're going to go through some key areas, like a kitchen would be a very important selling point to a buyer. Backyard and amenities. What does the master bath look like? And then there's a few others. But we'll look at those key areas that are going to determine value in the buyer's mind and also the appraiser's mind. And we'll say, okay, so I see that you want this price point, Todd, but does your kitchen look like that kitchen? Well, no, it doesn't. Well, how much would it cost you to get your kitchen to look like that kitchen? Well, it'd be another $30,000. Okay, well then let's take $30,000 back from the house that you're comparing to, because the buyer's going to look at it the same way. And sometimes it's minor things, but we really try and put some science behind how we're going to get to the right price, and then determine what's going to get the best outcome for our clients.
That's hugely helpful. I mean, I love hearing you say that that's how it's done, because I could see that would be a frustration point when you're trying to earn someone's business, and if they don't understand the connecting the dots, the why behind the recommendation.
Yeah. Well, that's something that I feel like I have the greatest responsibility for as a fiduciary representative to our clients, but also where our expertise comes into play. I got licensed in 2002, so I've been at this for a little while.
Yeah.
And I feel like we can really benefit our clients, because less experienced agents or people that maybe don't do as much business are going to use different benchmarks than we might use. And so they may or may not hit the price target. And hopefully they're not going on Zillow or something like that and and pitching that at the listing appointment. So,
oh yeah, we could have a whole different conversation down there. All right, well, let's switch gears to the buyer side then. So
sure.
Again, here you are. You've already talked about how to approach that. How are you preparing your buyers, and how would you recommend to someone who's listening that they talk to an agent to ensure that that agent that they magically found on the internet or that their friend referred to them is actually, ready to represent them in the best way possible?
I think there's a few things. I think, familiarity with the area is certainly helpful. There's the greatest value I think that we can provide to our clients is helping them to understand what they don't know that they don't know.
Don't know that they don't know, right?
So any buyer or seller is going to come with a certain set of questions that are on their mind, but there's nuances to the process or maybe to a specific community. Like in Ahwatukee, for example, perfect example, they're building a new freeway on the southern border of Ahwatukee. Yeah. The old timers down there that have been there a couple decades or more like me weren't too excited about that because everybody made fun of us and called us the world's largest cul-de-sac, but we all liked it because it was quiet and peaceful and there wasn't a lot of, traffic coming by. So we were okay with it. And so this is like an adjustment, and I think there's pros and cons to it. But over the last number of years, that was moving along, but it wasn't super visible. So if you had a buyer moving from out of state or a different part of the valley, they may or may not even be aware of that. But when that freeway's, a mile south of you, that could be an important consideration for people.
Right.
So I think knowing the area, key. I think level of service that they're going to provide. One of the chief complaints that we ever hear when we ask people just about real estate or past experiences or anything like that is responsiveness and communication. So that's something that we personally place a huge priority on. But I think knowing that, I think referrals are really good. A significant percentage of the business that we're involved in every single year comes through referral. So we're grateful for that and feel like that is evidence that we're delivering the quality of experience that the client wants.
It's interesting you bring that up, and just for those of you listening, that's a great question to ask. If someone's not getting a large percentage of their business from referrals, then you might want to question, did they do a great job the first time or not? So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's critically important. For me, it's the best kind of business to have because we're not trying to be everything to everybody. I've never done cold calling. I've never spent tons of money to buy internet leads or things like that. For me, as I said, it's always been a relationship-based business. And so the greatest compliment that you can have is someone that you've represented, or maybe somebody that you know in the community that maybe they haven't been in a place where they've had a real estate need, but they know you and they appreciate how you show up in the world, and they have a sense of trust and confidence that you can go do your job. So,
well, and go back to where we started, right? You talked about legacy and that you feel like you've got this great opportunity to be part of someone's life when you sell them a home, whether it's their first or their last, or somewhere in between. And so it just totally makes sense when you have that mindset. This episode is brought to you by homebuyeruniversity.net, your free comprehensive guide to buying or refinancing your home. Click over to homebuyeruniversity.net to get started online today.